Cover 2 podcast coming at you live back on OC Rock Radio for this week. And Jared, we're actually in a new studio. We're right down the hall a little bit. Different look for us today.
I'm not used to this. It's just a little, a little smaller.
It is.
Things are not in the right order. Things are in a different place.
We're actually sitting in 2 different spots. Normally you're on this side.
Yeah, normally I'm on the right and you're on the left.
Yeah.
And we're switched today so I can have my computer here.
Yeah, Jared's on the left now and I'm on the right. So
we're still going to have a good show.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. Yeah, the show's not going to be any different. We're going to do all the same things, and we should sound exactly the same, too.
I hope so.
Which would be cool. But, a lot of news coming in sports. Actually, not that much news, but there's enough to talk about, obviously. And the biggest thing that's going on is the NCAA scandal. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but we're also going to talk about the NFL Combine is coming up, so we're going to discuss kind of some Combine news. A lot of people like to talk about Combine news, so we'll give our take on the Combine and all that, and the quarterbacks and all the news you want. And then we'll dive into some other stuff a little bit later. But right now, let's go into the NCAA basketball scandal. Obviously, this started a couple months ago, or even almost a year ago, with all these recruiting scandals. It kind of started with Louisville, and now it's extended on to many other schools, some of the biggest schools in the nation being implicated in this scandal, and it's now time for the NCAA to start answering questions because this is not going to go away for sure.
No, this isn't going away anytime soon. This is just the beginning, and if you are a school that was mentioned on this list, good luck trying to get out of it. Listen, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the FBI is involved with this right now. It was one thing when schools do their own internal investigations and the NCAA brings in or does an investigation on a school. That's one thing. I'm not saying those aren't necessary, nor do those ever bring out results. But when you have the FBI coming in and investigating against the NCAA and all these school programs, that is, I don't really think it gets any more serious than that.
No, it doesn't, yeah.
And the fact that the FBI, they can do whatever they want. And listen, to me, this is, if I'm the NCAA, I think I'm more worried than anyone because they are obviously, I don't really think any of my friends or anyone that I've talked to or any of the podcasts that I listen to, everyone knows that the NCAA is corrupt.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, they've been able to get away with it for years and years and years because they're just a powerhouse. I was listening to Jalen Rose this morning on a podcast, a repeat of a podcast from a few days ago, and he called the NCAA so corrupt that they were basically running their business like the cartel.
I did hear him say that,
and I thought that was pretty interesting because, and I mean, when you hear that at first, you're like, wait a minute, the cartel? Come on, man, what are you talking about? They're not running drugs and all this stuff. But when you think about it, the NCAA is a $1 billion business. They're a non-profit organization.
Non-profit,
right? Which is just ridiculous. And none of their the reason why they're a $1 billion business is obviously because of the players. Yeah. Yet none of those players can earn a single dime. They can't go out and sign autographs. A lot of these players can't even buy their own jerseys. So there's so much to get into, so much to talk about. But at the end of the day, I think now this is coming to a point where light is being shed on this topic. As before, in years past, the NCAA was basically able to hide under their own shadow, and they had everything under their own control. So they could keep things sealed and not let things get leaked out. But now with the FBI involved, things will get revealed. The media will find out more information. Things will soon turn to the public. And I believe in the next few years, college basketball and college athletes and college sports in general will change completely. The face will change completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we kind of knew what was going on, right? We knew there was some debauchery going on in the NCAA. We knew that players were getting paid. We thought that was kind of over, though, to be honest. I thought it was over. You saw, especially what happened with Reggie Bush here with us in USC, and just being fans of USC, and seeing how hard they came down, the NCAA did, on Bush and USC and taking away their championships and stuff. I thought that it would never happen in other sports. Why would you guys want to risk having that happen? It reminds me a little bit of the Me Too movement that's going on, the sexual harassment movement that's going on in the entertainment business. But there was kind of a mention that, there might be that kind of stuff going on and all that stuff. But then when you get into, you have a big implicate in Louisville, and you had the Harvey Weinstein in entertainment. And now it's like, okay, now we can't let this happen, right? We know that this is a huge issue. Some of the biggest names in college basketball. I'm looking at this little list you have over here. It's schools like Kansas, Seton Hall, Notre Dame, Xavier, North Carolina, NC State. These are some of the biggest schools.
Duke, USC.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, these are the blue collar schools. These aren't the little. I don't want to say little, but these aren't like D2 schools, D3 schools that are competing with the big time. These are the name brand schools that are out there, and I think that's the thing that the FBI is trying to expose here. Is that, listen, these are the top dogs. These are the programs that we see every day in commercials, every day on TV, that are always nationally televised. And it's not just the small guys that are trying to compete here. It's the big fish who've been keeping secrets and doing things that they shouldn't have been doing for a long time.
No, it just shows that it's literally the top of the line. Like, this isn't teams punching up to the big guys saying, okay, we need to cheat because we can't compete. No, these are the teams that are the best teams in the world, and they're cheating. It'd be like the Golden State Warriors cheating in the NBA, or the New England Patriots cheating. Oh, well, that's kind of happened before. But it would be,
a little dig.
It'd be like the Dodgers cheating and stuff like that in baseball. It's just, it's strange, but not completely out of the question that this was going to happen. And then you've even had some NBA players that had been implicated. I think I saw Dennis Smith Jr.'s name was involved with this. I think Markelle Fultz. Yes. Right? I think that's why we see Washington on that list right there. So these are some of these top NBA draft picks. These are some top NBA rookies being implicated in this, and they're cheating. And then we're hearing other names of guys in the NCAA right now, like Miles Bridges and DeAndre Ayton have been involved in stuff. So this is a crazy, crazy thing. But Jared, I have a question for you. What is really going to change this stuff from happening in the future? Because let's say you decide to pay the players, and you decide to give the players, a salary of whatever, $15 an hour, or however you're long at practice, right? You're at practice 4 or 5 hours, you're studying film or whatever. You're getting $15, so you're getting paid a little bit, right? You're getting paid some. But wouldn't just the top players get illegally paid more in that sense, if you were to what is the actual solution to this? How are they going to fix this? There's obviously going to be some cheating involved in everything, but how are they going to stop this specific cheating where guys are just getting paid absorbent amounts of money when other guys are just playing for free?
Yeah, no, there has to be some type of baseline created to where all athletes, who participate at the collegiate level, are able to get some type of compensation. And listen, there's going to be, on the flip side of that, people are going to say, well, listen, these athletes, when they receive their scholarships, they get their education paid for free. That's partly true. What a lot of people may not know or may not understand is that the majority of the time when a high school student athlete gets a scholarship, the majority of the time it's not for 4 years. It's actually it's 1 year at a time. So you have to keep that scholarship, which means you have to keep your grades up and you have to perform in your sport in order to continue that scholarship throughout your collegiate career. So it's very, very rare that a high school student going into college will get a full ride scholarship for the full length of their college career. That's very rare. So like I said, the majority of the time you get it for 1 year, and then every year it's like renewed in a sense. So if you don't perform or if you're not doing well in the classroom, they can easily take that scholarship away, and then you are back out on your own, either paying it for yourself or having your family help you or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of different scenarios with that as well. But going back to your question specifically, I think there has to be some type of baseline. And here's another thing that's kind of weird. Is like, obviously college football and then men's college basketball are I would say the top two most profitable.
Oh, absolutely, clearly.
Right?
Yeah.
Sports in the collegiate world. So would those players receive more money than, say, a college baseball player, or if you're on the swim team or the volleyball team, or is it a flat out rate for everyone?
That's the question. Too.
That's a different.
I think you would have to look at it, and you would have to kind of pay them based on what it was worth. I mean, if the football team is generating the most money, right? Unless you're at one of these schools where the basketball team maybe dominates the school or something. But most football teams are going to be dominating the money, the wealth that's coming in for college, and so maybe you do say, if the NCAA looks at it and goes, well, okay, 98% of teams that have football teams are generating more money than the basketball teams, so they need to get paid like $5 per hour more, whatever it is. And then maybe it is a system, and then maybe if certain sports start coming up, those players get paid. I think you just treat it like any normal job. If people are clearly doing better than what they're exceeding, they're making more money for the college, then they get paid more. It is a slippery slope, though, because I personally think the easiest way to do is just to pay everybody kind of base salary. They play sports, period. And then give them free meal plans or whatever you do, because then you're creating a fairness to all of it. But then that's why I was asking you. I was saying, if you do that, then why wouldn't Sean Miller come in and give another $100,000 to a player and say, hey, keep this under the table. We're going to pay you, but we're going to give you more money to come here. That's where it comes in. It's like, is this ever going to end?
Maybe if the FBI wants to step in and continue
to
form their own collegiate group where they are their main purpose, their main job is to watch the NCAA and try to regulate as much as they can as far as schools and coaches and agents and shoe companies not giving money to athletes. I think that's another thing that maybe people aren't looking at as much, obviously, with these reports coming out. Obviously, the majority of the talk has been on the schools and on the Christian Dawkins and Andy Miller, the two agents who have been most associated with this scandal. But I think the shoe companies also have a lot to do with this.
Oh, yeah.
And they have a major influence going along with these agents and these coaches as far as where these athletes are going to go, and if they even do decide to go to college, or if they want to go overseas and play. These shoe companies, obviously with basketball, to me is probably their biggest support system. So in the NBA right now, Kevin Durant, all the big name guys, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, all these guys have their own shoe deals, right? And if you're a high school basketball player, and you say, hey, you know what, I'm good enough to where I'm only going to go to college for 1 year, then I'm going to go pro. Why not start talking to a shoe company right now and get myself associated with them, start making some money right now. That way when I get to the NBA, I already have a shoe deal. You know what I mean? So I think the shoe companies need to be talked about more, and I think they need to be investigated as well, because I think they're a big part of this, along with the coaches and the agents.
No, totally. And does this see? And here's another question to ask: does this mean that we should extend the amount of time you're in college to 2 or 3 years to make sure that these shoe deals can't? Because it's a lot harder to cheat for 3 years if you're at it's the way baseball and football are. Is if you go to college to go play for those sports, you have to stay 3 years.
Right. Until at least your junior
Exactly.
year.
That's why we see redshirt sophomores leave as quarterbacks in college football all the time, and that's why a lot of baseball players leave after 3 years too. But so it's a lot harder to cheat for 3 years and keep that under wraps. Oh, I got to deal with Nike under, that's a lot harder to keep. So maybe that's another thing you do. But then you would almost have to let people come from high school, like it used to be back in the day too. So
I think they should.
Yeah, I think they should too. I think we've talked about this in the past too. Clearly, high school basketball players can play in the NBA.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, here's some names: Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Dwight Howard. I mean, they can play. So you need to LeBron James. Almost forgot about him. These are all high school players that did not go to college. So there's clearly not a reason to do it. But then again, then they're probably going to start paying the high school kids when they're sophomores and juniors. So you're right. You need the FBI to step in, and maybe the FBI being involved will change this whole thing, because, like you said, this is serious. The FBI is doing this investigation. This isn't just the NCAA. Because if the NCAA was doing this, they'd probably just cover it up.
Oh, everything would be under wraps, and we would have no idea.
Yeah. Oh, Sean Rosenwald? Oh, we're not going to investigate that. What are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah. Rick Pitino? Oh, no way. But yeah, interesting there. So another topic I want to talk about would be does there need to be punishment? Number one, for the guys in college right now that are implicated, guys like Miles Bridges. And does there need to be some sort of punishment for the NBA guys right now, like Dennis Smith Jr. or Markelle Fultz? What does the punishment need to be for all this? Because these names being involved here, there needs to be something that happens.
So if you're a current athlete in college right now, like a Miles Bridges or DeAndre Ayton, then yes, I think they need to be punished as far as they should not be allowed to play anymore. If they did receive any money from any type of agent or booster or shoe company or whatever, that money needs to be returned. And yeah, they basically, like, from right now on, they can look forward to training and getting ready for the NBA, because I would not let them step a foot on a collegiate court again.
Ever again?
No, ever again.
So you're not just saying it's a 1 year suspension for the rest of this year. You're saying
I wouldn't let them play again. They would in a sense be banned. And that some people might say that's a little harsh. But then again, I'm sure 90% of student college athletes are not in these guys' positions and didn't take money to come play.
Yeah.
So the playing field needs to be level as far as that is concerned. So yes, I would ban those guys, and I would not let them play again. Listen, DeAndre Ayton and Miles Bridges, they're going to go pro anyway. More than likely, those were one and done guys, and not guys that were going to stay long in college in the first place. So I would not let them come back. The more realistic thing that I can see the NCAA doing is just suspending them for the rest of the year, and then if they were to choose to come back, I'm sure they would let them come back the following next year, 2019. But yeah, I would not let them play anymore. The next issue is, do you punish the schools? Because then here's the thing, it's like, and we can talk about this with USC, with Louisville, with all these other programs. Do you punish the student or the current athletes who had nothing to do with this, or do you try to just punish the specific people that were involved, right? Because with going back to with USC, when USC actually got punished and when they actually got their scholarships and everything taken away, Reggie Bush was long gone. He was already in the NFL. Yeah. So all of those athletes that were currently playing for USC had nothing to do with it, yet they had to pay the actual price. Yes, Reggie Bush had to give back his Heisman. Yes, he had to live with the guilt and all of that stuff. But guess what? He was in the NFL. Like, he on the field, he wasn't really hurting from this, at least from what we know. So it was actually the next in line athletes who had to deal with all this. So to me, I think that's something that the NCAA needs to look at, because if I'm an athlete looking to go to a specific college, and that's been my dream college to go to forever, I want to go there knowing that I'm not going to get punished for something I didn't do. Yeah. Because I don't think that's right. So I'm not saying I'm going to sit here and say this is how you can fix that, because I know that's a very gray area. But I think that's something that the NCAA needs to look into, because kids who are having to suffer for other people's mistakes, I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the fact that you don't want to hurt the people that had nothing to do with this, right? And you do need to suspend DeAndre Ayton and Miles Bridges and the other players that have been involved in this for at least the rest of the season. Because look at this, okay? And I know this was kind of a UCLA internal thing, but UCLA suspended Cody Riley and Jalen Hall for the rest of the season for stealing some sunglasses, okay? When you look at this compared to that situation, they're not even close.
No.
These guys are colluding with agents to make thousands of dollars for themselves so that they can get better deals in the NBA. So at least suspend them for this season. I'm going to agree with you too on this, is that you need to suspend them, you need to ban them from the NCAA period, from playing in the NCAA. And yeah, they might go to the NBA and they might be successful and all that stuff or whatever, but you can't let these guys keep playing. I mean, if they're suspending Alonzo Trier for a second PED thing for the rest of the season, you need to suspend these guys for literally making your name look bad. Wouldn't they? What you almost feel like you'd want them. You'd be like, okay, well, let them be the scapegoats, right? And I also think some of these coaches too. Obviously, Sean Miller, we heard about what he did, $100,000. Talking about giving $100,000 to DeAndre Ayton. He needs to get suspended for the rest of the season.
Oh, he's done.
I actually think he should get fired.
If that is true, because I haven't heard any of this. Obviously, I don't think anyone's heard of it. There's just been multiple reports. But if that is indeed true, Sean Miller will never coach another college game in his career, and he'll more likely go to jail.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? If we start seeing guys go to jail.
Yeah, no, there's a legit chance that if this is true, he will go to court and he will end up in jail for this. Yeah, and I was listening to a radio show and they were saying anything over $5,000 or $10,000. I forget the specific amount, but anything over a certain amount is subject to jail time. And obviously Sean Miller's at the $100,000 mark, so he easily qualifies.
It's so
easily qualifies for jail time. So I'm not sure obviously if that will happen or if other things will get worked out. But yes, no, Sean Miller's in a bad spot. I can almost guarantee that you will not see him on the sidelines for Arizona, at least for the rest of this year, and you will more than likely never see him coach, at least at the collegiate level, for the rest of his life.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what kind of needs to happen, right? You need to punish these guys, and players need to get punished, coaches need to get punished. I think something needs to happen to the guys in the NBA somewhat too. At least the guys that are, that they're in the NBA as rookies right now. I don't think you need to be go digging and seeing the guy. 7 years ago, this guy was at Michigan State. It's okay. Well, we'll leave it alone. But you maybe show an example. Hey, just because you're in the NBA doesn't mean that the FBI is not going after you too, because you clearly colluded with all these guys too. So it's a crazy little situation. But there's obviously going to be more news coming out. Probably more guys get in trouble for this, and probably more teams implicated. So this conversation isn't over.
Oh no! And one last quick thing I want to say about this. I think the only way that this situation actually starts to get resolved is if these athletes start to boycott.
Ooh, I know. It's what needs to happen too.
Because listen, like the reason why the NCAA continues to make billions of dollars is because these athletes continue to play.
Yeah.
So when these athletes stop playing, like imagine this. Imagine if athletes boycotted the NCAA and they boycotted the Final Four. Like, are you kidding me? That's the moneymaker. Yeah. That's March Madness. That's Vegas. That's like the biggest time of year for Vegas, right? So if these athletes boycotted the Final Four and the whole tournament, March Madness, I'm pretty sure the NCAA would get the message like these guys aren't messing around anymore.
No.
Right?
That would be, and imagine, they're not contractually obligated to do that. That's the one caveat.
So I think that is the only way that the NCAA will realize that these players are serious. Because if not, as long as these players continue to go out and play, they are at the will and the mercy of the NCAA.
Yeah, why should the NCAA?
Until they take a step back and say, listen, you guys don't control us, and we want to be compensated, or we want what we deserve. I don't think anything's going to change.
Definitely, that is one of the things that definitely needs to happen if anything wants to change, and maybe that's the solution. Maybe we came up with the solution right there at the end. So we're running out of time on the segment. We're going to go to break right now, and we're going to come back talking a little NFL Combine. I know Jared's excited about this because a little more football talk is always nice in a time where there's not a lot of news going on. But so we'll be right back on the Cover 2 podcast with a little NFL Combine talk.
Hi, good morning. Hey, Rick. I'll just be happy to answer any questions that I can. I'm very excited to be back here in Indianapolis. I sure have missed the Combine.
Lamar Jackson didn't make your first mock draft, Mel. When the draft rolls around in April, how high could we see him go?
I think second round, and maybe late first, as long as he wants to trade in, Max, and you can't project trades at this stage of the first round and figure out what teams are going to do 25 to 32. They certainly could look at Lamar Jackson at that point.
They just want to see you in a pressure moment. So it doesn't hurt you. Even if you perform poorly, it doesn't really hurt you unless you just go out there.
Because his ball security is the main knock. Exactly. I mean, everybody knows he throws good football.
And you're not going to find that out throwing around, the football in underwear against air. You know what I mean?
No.
So there's nothing to lose other than, people start questioning, well, why isn't he throwing right now? And there won't be an answer until he has his home pro day at USC.
According to what we just timed,
I will go to the house.
It appears that Chris Johnson
my plane and go home.
Is no longer the record holder at the 40-yard dash since we've been covering it.
I don't even think he's sweating.
Cover 2 podcast back live on OC Rock Radio. Man, that feels good to say.
Yeah.
I know it was only a week, but it just feels right being back live on the air. Yeah. And we're coming at you with an NFL segment with the NFL Combine coming up this weekend. Actually, today's Wednesday, yesterday on Tuesday was the first day when players were reporting. The running backs, offensive linemen, and special teams players reported. So they have to go through their registration, medical exams, hospital exams, all that stuff before they can actually get on the field and perform their workouts. So it's an entire process. It takes about 4 days for the players to go through everything before they can get on the field. So a lot to go through, a lot to talk about with this. Obviously, the Combine is a huge process and a huge step, not only for the athletes getting drafted, but for all of the teams who are there in Indianapolis. They get to have meetings with these players, sit down one-on-one and find out a little more in depth about these guys and, find out what they're really about. Is it just about football? Is it more than that? Is it about the money, all that stuff? So, Nick, I want to ask you, what are you excited about with the Combine? Is there anything in particular that will you be watching? Is it something that you're going to have your eye on? Talk to me about the Combine.
No, I get excited about the Combine usually every single year, just because there's so much that could come out of it. Obviously, you have all these interviews that the guys always will say something stupid in the interviews, and then you have the quarterbacks, and this year specifically though, with the quarterbacks, because you asked me what I'm most excited about. I think it's just to see how well all these quarterbacks do. You have Rosen, Darnold, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson. And there's been a lot of talk about all these different guys too and what they can bring to the NFL. And so I'm excited to see what these quarterbacks do in the Combine. And let's say how fast Lamar Jackson's 40 time is, or how well Josh Rosen looks in the throwing, or how well Josh Allen looks. So I'm most excited about the quarterbacks in this Combine, because I just think there's so many talented ones, a little more than usual, or at least the last couple of years as far as quarterbacks go. So I'm excited about that. And then, of course, I already kind of mentioned this, but I'm always excited to see the 40-yard dash times, to see if anybody can break the records. John Ross did it last year, so let's see if someone can do it this year, and let's just see how freakish some of these humans are going to the NFL with their 40 times. So always interested to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me, the Combine is, listen, as a fan, I love watching the Combine. It's a football event, so I'm going to watch it. If there's football on, regardless of if it's a game or something to do with the NFL or college football, I'm going to be there watching it more than likely if I have the time. So I really do enjoy watching these players go out and do their drills and run and all that stuff. In all reality, the Combine to me, if I was one of these teams, it's not the end-all be-all. At the end of the day, I'm looking at their tape and how they play. Tape doesn't lie. So, it's one thing if a guy runs a 4.3 40 and he's lightning fast and faster than Chris Johnson and, he's all that stuff. But can he play and produce on the field? Because it's one thing to be fast and have that track speed, but can you translate that to the field and catch passes or block or tackle or do the actual football things? Like, they one of the things that these players go through before they get on the field is they have a bench press test. Yes. So, they bench press 225 pounds for as many reps as they can. It's like, that's great, but how does the bench press actually translate to playing football? Like, to me, it really doesn't. Like, when are you on your back
exactly.
with helmet and shoulder pads on, trying to lift something up on your back. Like it's so like I get it, it's just it's a part of the thing, but it's to me like that's not it's like, oh my gosh, someone only bench pressed 225 pounds 4 times. Like you're gonna automatically disqualify a player or take him off your list because of that? Like that's not the NLBO. As well as if a certain player, like let's say you like watching quarterbacks. Let's say if Josh Rosen comes out and doesn't have a great performance. To me, a lot of that doesn't mean that he's not a good quarterback or he shouldn't be a first round talent quarterback. What that would say to me is that, one, he probably has jitters, and most importantly, the receivers that he's throwing to, he hasn't worked with these guys. These are receivers from different schools, so they aren't his receivers from UCLA that he's been working with for the past 3-4 years. So you have to take certain things with a grain of salt when you're watching these athletes perform. Certain one-on-one agility drills and that type of thing. Yes, you can see how quick they are in their sideline to sideline movement. And their quickness and all that stuff, but there's little things that you have to kind of take a step back and say, all right, he didn't have the best day today. Let's go back and look at the tape. And if he's playing well on tape, then I think that needs to overshadow what these players are doing on the field.
Well, and I've never liked the fact I'm pretty sure most of these guys only do this stuff once, right? During the combine, they only get to throw once.
Right.
They get there one day. Why not give him 2 days to do it? One guy screws up the first day. They go, he's a little bit nervous.
Well, that's what their pro days are for.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. But I think it'd be cool if they did. Let's say you go out and you can choose. You can do this is a choice, but you go and you don't have the best day. Let's say Rosen goes out there, missed a lot of receivers, throws a lot behind a couple guys. Like you said, he's not used to these receivers. Might have a little bit of jitters, whatever. And he goes, I want to come out tomorrow, too. We have that second day I can come out, show you guys this. So I'll show you this was just a one-day thing. And then, you don't have to wait all the way till the pro day. But I'm going to disagree with you on one point. And you're saying that not take anything into a quarterback, missing receivers and stuff. Because he's not going to have his receivers from UCLA. I'm talking about Rosen. Having his receivers from UCLA on his NFL team either. So does that mean that he's going to be missing these guys all the time? Or if he has jitters like you're mentioning, does that mean he is going to have jitters in the big game or the first game of the season? So there is something to look at. And I think that's why we pay attention to it, because there is that little stuff to look at. I mean, if a guy is going around the cones, those drills where they go around the cones, and he's just consistently falling the whole time, there's something to look into that. You go, okay, well, this is a simple NFL drill, and he's not being able to do it. So I have to disagree a little bit the fact that you can't take much out of this.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not saying you can't take anything out of it. My counterpoint to your argument on the quarterbacks is that, listen, when they get drafted and they go to whatever team they go to, they're going to have a full offseason and all of training camp and everything to get acquainted with their receivers. When they come to the NFL Combine, they're getting medically evaluated, they're meeting with teams, and then for 2 hours they go on the field and throw to receivers that they're not going to throw to ever again. Yeah. So it's not like they get to practice with these receivers beforehand and then come out and perform at the Combine. It's like they literally come out, stretch, warm up, and immediately throw to these guys who they don't even know the names to. So that's where I'm saying, like, there's, maybe you don't know, like, maybe a guy who's 5'10", he's a little bit quicker and he gets out of his break really fast. Yeah. So you need to anticipate that a little bit. I mean, it's there's little nuances that when you're actually working with a different receiver or working with the tight end or whatever, you figure out where he likes the ball, or this guy is good at making a really contested catch and other guys aren't. They can't twerk their bodies in certain directions. So I do think that just because a guy misses a receiver or he doesn't hit him exactly on the numbers, I don't think that you should completely ding him for that. Now, if Josh Rosen comes out and let's say he has 20 passes to throw and he only completes 5, then that's a little more alarming.
So you're saying if it's drastic,
yes,
then you look at it.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's what I was trying to say.
If there's a little struggle and maybe he seems to have a little bit of an off day. I think you have to, study it and say, okay, was it really him, or was it because he doesn't know these receivers realistically? But if he's going out and airmailing passes and throwing balls onto the turf, then I think that's a whole other thing. So it's like I said, if a guy has a bad day, That's one thing, but I would have to go back and look at the tape and say, okay, why is he having a bad day?
Yeah.
Is it because he's actually maybe not as good as we thought? Or is it just because he doesn't really know the players that he's working with?
Well, and the same thing could be said if he plays really, really well. Like, literally hits everybody right on a dime. That would be pretty impressive, right? Even though it's a combine or it's whatever. But if a quarterback goes out there and literally throws every pass perfect, and is dropping dimes in the receiver's hands, that's something to look at. You go, okay, this guy just came off the street essentially from, obviously he's been practicing and all that, but he came off the street here in Indianapolis and threw to guys that he doesn't know, and he threw every ball perfect. So there is stuff to look at, but I think you're right. Maybe I should tailor it to drastic things that you see during the combine. You kind of look at, and maybe the little things you don't nitpick at guys, and their draft stock doesn't plummet because, Josh Allen, they've been saying he's possibly number 1 pick or whatever. Josh Allen throws and incompletes 5 passes. Now he's going number 7. That would be a little ridiculous. I agree. I don't think there is much to take out of that either. But I do think there's definitely stuff you can take out of this.
Right,
sure.
Definitely. And also with the combine, I believe the NFL only invites, I believe it's like 300 of these athletes. So not everyone gets an invite to the combine. If you do, it's basically just another opportunity to showcase yourself. There's certain players like Sam Darnold who's not going to throw. He's going to wait for his pro day to throw. That's his own decision. There's 2 sides to that. One side is that, like I mentioned before, he's not going to be throwing to receivers that he knows. So he doesn't want to take that risk of going out and potentially having a bad performance because he doesn't want that on his resume. The flip side to that is, if you're a competitor, you go out and you throw to whoever, and I don't care if you're playing in snow, sunny, right? Like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? So there's 2 sides to that, which I'm sure people will debate and argue. For me, I'm a competitor. I want all these guys to go out and compete no matter what, because that shows me that you're not afraid. And I'm not saying that Sam Darnold is afraid, but you're willing to go out in any type of situation, no matter how daunting it is, and perform to the best of your ability. So if for Sam Darnold, if you want to go out and be a franchise quarterback, I guarantee you there are certain teams right now that are hearing the reports that Sam Darnold isn't going to throw, and they're jotting that down and saying, why? Is it because he's scared? Does he have maybe a small injury that he wants to heal for his pro day? What's the underlining reason why he doesn't want to throw? Because all the other top quarterbacks are Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen. All these guys are, as far as we know, going to the combine to throw. So why, Sam Darnold, are you not going?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And maybe he wants to throw to his receivers, right? He wants to throw to his guys. Mm-hmm. But again, I actually don't think it's that big of a deal that Darnold's not throwing it to combine, because you see guys, don't do much of the combine all the time. So, but you're right. The GMs, for example, are going to be looking at this and going, what is going on? And he's going to get physicals and all that. So, you don't know if it's an injury or anything like that. But it's, Darnold, he's making a little bit of news. Right, and I kind of wanted, the people in LA kind of wanted to see Darnold and Rosen show out in this thing too.
Oh, I would.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I am a little disappointed that he's not going to be throwing, because it's obviously, for a quarterback, that's one of the main things you want to be able to do.
Yeah, you might need to do that well
if you're an NFL quarterback. But no, all that should be interesting. So we were actually talking about this before. We just switch a little, go into something else here, and we were talking about Lamar Jackson and how we obviously. If you've been following sports, you've seen that Bill Polian came out and said, Lamar Jackson might be better as a wide receiver. And so that sparked major debate between a lot of people. So I think we should talk about this too, since we were just talking about it off break, and we actually had a pretty good conversation. So I'll let you start with what you were kind of telling me. Give your opinion of Lamar Jackson and this whole wide receiver quarterback thing, and what you expect from him in the NFL.
Yeah, no, listen, he's a Heisman Trophy winner for a reason, okay? This guy is a stud. He's in my opinion, the closest thing to Michael Vick that we've seen. He might even be faster than Michael Vick. He's not as big. He's a pretty skinny guy, which is my main concern with him going to the next level in the NFL. Obviously, those guys are bigger, faster, and stronger, and the more hits you take, those are going to produce a lot of wear and tear on Lamar Jackson's, skinny body. So I think that's something that he's going to need to bulk up a little bit to be able to take those hits that he's going to take. But I do want to see him get a legitimate opportunity to be able to play quarterback in the National Football League. There's going to be teams out there that have already said that they want to look at him as a receiver. They don't think he can be a quarterback. And those are legitimate questions as well, because at Louisville, they literally built the offense around him. So it was a spread offense, but he did a lot of running as well. It wasn't like he was, sitting under center or sitting in shotgun, dropping back 3 steps, 5 steps, and, throwing darts like Tom Brady all game. He would read option and do a lot of zone runs. And, you've seen him take a 60-yard run to the house for a touchdown and that type of thing. So his accuracy sometimes was obviously not on point to where it should be for when you think of a Heisman Trophy quarterback winner. But I think he deserves the opportunity to get a legitimate chance. Now, I'm not saying he's going to sit here and become the next, Michael Vick, where he's going to be the franchise quarterback for a team for the next 10 years. But like I said, I think he should get the opportunity to at least try in training camp. And then if it doesn't work out, then, talk about transitioning him to another position. But at least give the guy the opportunity. If that's what he really wants to do, let him put his best foot forward. Because, listen, if a team drafts him and immediately says you're not going to play quarterback for us, you're going to play receiver, listen, I'm sure his dream has been to always go to the NFL. So I'm sure he will take that opportunity and go with it. But that has to be, just completely draining, right? If you've been a quarterback for your whole career and now you get to the NFL and now you're not getting the opportunity, that would drain me a little bit. That would. I'm not saying he's not going to give 100% effort at whatever position they put him at, most likely receiver. But I don't know. That wouldn't make me feel good. So I hope he gets the opportunity to at least prove doubters wrong and prove that, hey, I'm not just a running quarterback in college. I can be accurate. I can make the NFL throws. Let me be the franchise quarterback.
I completely agree. I think it's ridiculous that people are saying that he should just be a wide receiver and all that stuff. And I think these teams that are saying he's going to be a wide receiver are teams that obviously don't need a quarterback, right? Because you're not going to be like, oh, there's a quarterback in the draft, but you know what? We're going to draft him as a receiver. And then we'll pick another quarterback later. This is not going to happen, right? So I think the teams out there that need quarterbacks like Denver and like Arizona and Indianapolis or whatever, and anybody else you want to say that needs a quarterback, they're not going, okay, Lamar Jackson, he's off the board completely. We're not going to pick him because we think he's a wide receiver. I think there's a lot of people that are out there saying that think he's the next Michael Vick, like you're mentioning. Personally, myself, I think he's a lot different than these other running quarterbacks we've seen come into the league. I think he's ridiculously fast. I personally, now I watched Michael Vick and all that, but I have not seen a guy in college recently that's as fast as Lamar Jackson at quarterback. This guy was a speeding bullet when he'd come out of the shotgun and start running. It's ridiculous. Yeah, it was. I'm not the biggest Louisville fan, obviously, but I would when Louisville was on TV. They were like 7-5 last year, whatever they were. I watched it. I was like, I want to see Lamar Jackson. So there's going to be a team. He's going to get drafted, okay, and there are going to be teams that like him at quarterback. But do the thing with Terrell Pryor and all these other guys that turn into wide receivers. Let them prove that they're not a good quarterback, right? Let them prove that they can't play quarterback. You can't be saying that he's not a quarterback coming out instantly when he was the Heisman Trophy winner, like you said. And then he was in the Heisman Trophy room again last year. So the guy is clearly a good enough quarterback to play quarterback. But let him prove that he's not. Let's not come out there here and just be saying that he's not good enough. I think it's ridiculous. And you're right, it hurts his confidence.
Where do you think where do you think Jackson gets drafted?
What
round?
See, and we saw last year where a lot of quarterbacks were picked earlier than we thought. So I think that might happen again. I'm going to go first round. I think he's going to go first round. I think he's going to be picked higher than people think. I haven't been looking at mock drafts that often, to be honest. I'll probably start looking at them now just because the combine's coming up and there's a lot more talk on it. And, the NFL's kind of getting back in the news. But from what I've seen, he's a little later in the first round, right, or later in the draft. I think he might go earlier And I think he'll obviously go to one of those teams that needs a quarterback.
I think he goes in the first round. I don't think he's an actual first-round talent quarterback.
Okay.
So what and why I think he goes in the first round is because I think Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, I think those 4 quarterbacks will easily go in the first round, which means if you're a team that doesn't get one of those 4 quarterbacks,
it's a good point, yeah.
You're going to be panicking and you're going to have to jump up to get a Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
So I really think he's more of a second, even potentially third-round talent quarterback. But I think because the depth of the position and the need for a quarterback, right? I mean, listen, you don't have a quarterback, you're really not going to go to the playoffs and you're not going to win championships. So those guys are going to go first. And then I think there's going to be teams like the Bills who are sitting at number 20, right? I think they might have to jump up maybe ahead of Arizona, who I think is in the teens, and maybe snatch a Lamar Jackson a little bit sooner than they would potentially like because these other quarterbacks are already off the board. If for some random reason the quarterbacks aren't getting picked as early as many people think, then I think Lamar Jackson will fall a little bit because there won't be as big of a need to go up and get him. So unfortunately for him, I think it's where he gets drafted is going to depend on where the other quarterbacks go. If they go early, then I think he will the better chances of him going early as well. If for some reason teams don't take quarterbacks and some of the quarterbacks start to fall a couple spots, then I think there's more of a chance that Lamar Jackson falls and goes later in the rounds.
Yeah, I at least here's what I hope. I hope when he does get drafted, he gets drafted and the team wants to have him as their starting quarterback. Because I want to see him play next year.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I want to see him play next year.
I want him to sit.
You want him to sit?
Yes, I want him to learn. I want him to be. I'm not saying he's got to sit for 4 years like Aaron Rodgers, but I would like him to go to a team like Minnesota, or not that they have a quarterback on their roster right now because they have 3 that are free agents, but to a team where they at least have a bridge quarterback where Lamar Jackson can sit in the film room for an entire year and learn the NFL ways, and then get his feet wet a little bit in preseason, sit for a whole year, and then 2019. See what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, me saying that, by the way, is completely selfish. I just want to see him on the field.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
even care if he's
so.
in the right
So if
situation.
the Arizona Cardinals pick Lamar Jackson in the first round, you'll be okay with him starting him right away.
Let's not put the Arizona Cardinals.
I'm just saying.
Let's just say I'm like I said, I'm high on Lamar Jackson. If the Cardinals draft him, I don't necessarily know if I would want him to be our starting quarterback.
So now you're backpedaling.
Oh, it's completely selfish.
Okay,
Like I said, it's a completely selfish analysis of this. But at least with the Cardinals, I don't know if I'd want to see him as our starting quarterback next year. Maybe let's do your plan for the Cardinals, but everybody else can go ahead. Go ahead. Bills draft him. New England Patriots draft him. Play him over Tom Brady. I don't care, But I like to see fantastic football players play fantastically, and I would want to see him go out and do it, just like I want to see Baker Mayfield. And that's why I'm high on those 2 guys too. So it's all good stuff. And wherever Lamar Jackson gets picked and whatever he does during the combine will be interesting. We'll probably be talking about it still. But
yes, we will.
We are going to go to break once again. And Jared, what do you think we're going to be talking about when we come back from break?
We have a little segment that I like to call Do You Care?
In the first live Do You Care after a week off. So it might be a little different, and we're going to have some good stuff. But we'll be back with Do You Care on the other side of this quick break.
LeBron James played himself into the NBA record books on Tuesday night. The King became the first player in league history to surpass 30,000 points, 8,000 rebounds, and 8,000 assists in a career. LeBron had already amassed the points and rebounds marks and made history with his 11th assist of the night during the Cavs' win over the Nets.
New York Jets informed their one-time franchise player Mo Wilkerson that they were moving on from him. Not a big surprise that this move would come. It does free up salary cap space, and I think at this point in time, the Jets have decided to go in a different direction. They have released Mo Wilkerson. It'll be one more defensive lineman into the free agent market, but he comes with questions. He'll come with questions about what he produced for the Jets, but he did get that big contract when he was the franchise player, and in the Jets' eyes, did not play up to it.
Well, a couple days ago, we saw Shohei Ohtani take to the hill for the very first time as an Angel. This afternoon, he took to the plate for the very first time, and for the most part, called an impressive outing.
He was very good, very composed. You see the presence. Every eye is on him from Southern California to the U.S., globally, all around. A game broadcasted back to Japan for one reason. This guy is an attraction.
Come to Podcast is back here on OC Rock Radio, returned after 1 week off. Once again, I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And Jared, it is time for our favorite segment of the day. It's time for Do You Care? Whoever's in the next office probably just got really mad at me for doing that.
But, oh, well. They know what time it is.
It's actually Jim's office. That's actually the guy that runs this radio station's office. That's right next to us. So,
hey, Jim.
Hey, Jim. If you didn't hear us the last hour or so, we're here. So it's time for Do You Care? Enough of that. And I think, Jared, you're going to get the first question here.
Let's do it.
And so, Jared, do you care that Shohei Ohtani played pitcher and in the field? And sorry. Let me restart that question real quick. Do you care that Shohei Ohtani pitched and hit this weekend?
I don't care. I'm excited for him, and I can't wait to see him in a regular season game. But it was preseason. I believe he pitched 2 innings, and he had 1 at bat. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz about him coming over from Japan, and the Angels spent a lot of money to get this guy. He's supposed to be the next up and coming superstar. But it's still spring training. It's still an exhibition game, and it was his first game. So I think the expectations need to be tempered a little bit.
Yeah.
And once the opening day comes around, and he more than likely will be pitching a lot more and just DHing sparingly. But when we get to the regular season, that's when I will start to want to watch and tune in more to see what he really does. It's great that he's getting work right now, and he needs to get acclimated to Major League Baseball play. But listen, it's the first of many spring training games, so for me, not as big of a deal yet. Nick, do you care that the NHL hockey trade deadline was Monday?
Yes, I do care. A lot of trades went down. Some of the bigger ones, though, were, we'll just name this one. Tampa Bay Lightning have been amazing this year. Been one of the best teams in the league, and they just got Ryan McDonough. Big defenseman for the New York Rangers. New York Rangers completely selling their entire team. They already gave away Rick Nash, one of their best forwards, and they're looking to give other people away, too. But so Ryan McDonough, a huge, big defenseman, is going to Tampa Bay Lightning, so they bolster their roster. They already have a bunch of all-star players, and now they bolster with another all-star player. Tomas Tatar from the Detroit Red Wings was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights, who once again have also been one of the best teams in the league. And then there was a couple of other little minor trades and other things, but another interesting thing about this trade deadline was that Erik Karlsson, defenseman for the Ottawa Senators, was not traded because he's in the last year of his contract, and Ottawa is not the best team this year. And a lot of people do not think that the Ottawa Senators will pay Erik Karlsson what he wants to be paid. He kind of wants to make the hockey max, and it's hard for a team to give that to a defenseman, just because even though defensemen obviously they have a real good place in the game, it's hard to give a player like that the max. When you have a lot of other forwards to pay, because there's less defensemen than there are forwards on an NHL roster. So, interesting that he wasn't traded, but you could see him get traded in the offseason or get signed by another team. But as far as those were kind of the 3 big things I saw from the trade deadline. Now the hockey season can kind of get rolling. Every team is ready. They have their rosters set, and we're kind of good to go. Rick Nash, by the way, was traded to the Boston Bruins. So another good team that is improved, but it's just like the NBA a couple weeks ago. Now we kind of start to see. Now we can really start gearing for the playoffs. So NHL trade deadline, definitely interested in that. Jared, do you care that Muhammad Wilkerson was released from the New York Jets?
I don't care. Back-to-back don't cares, by the way. Doesn't happen a lot.
I'm waiting for the third one.
No, I don't care. The Jets had to do this, and the Jets are idiots in the first place, in my opinion, for signing Wilkerson to such a huge contract. Now, Wilkerson is a heck of a player. He's definitely a Pro Bowler and a guy who deserves to get paid. But 2 years ago, he signed a 5-year, $86 million contract. That's a lot of coin for a defensive tackle. Now, he's not as good as Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong Suh's making over $100 million throughout the length of his contract. But I personally, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to diss a lot of these defensive tackles, but I don't feel that they change the game enough, and impact the game enough to where they deserve to get that much money. Like, they're not quarterbacks, they're not a shutdown corner like Deion Sanders, to where they can literally, produce a win for your team. They obviously do a lot, and on the defensive line, they usually take up 2 offensive linemen, 2 blockers, so that the other rush guys on the ends can get to the quarterback and get sacks. So they obviously play a huge role. But $86 million worth, that's a lot of coin. And obviously the Jets realized that his play was not up to that contract. And I don't think, even Ndamukong Suh's play has not been up to that $100 million contract. So when players sign these huge deals, it's great for the first year or two. But if they don't live up to that, they're going to get cut, or they're going to take a huge, massive pay cut. The Jets are looking to get some of that money back, and potentially go after Kirk Cousins or another one of these quarterbacks. So he unfortunately was one of the casualties. Nick, do you care, switching over to baseball, that Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton are playing in their first game together?
No, I don't really care. It'll be cool to see them in the lineup together, but it would be obviously better to see them in the regular season. It would be cool to see where they put them in the lineup, I guess. But no, not too interested with this. I'm surprised it took him this long to actually play. I went to a spring training game last Sunday, and I watched Giants and Cubs, and Brian Rizzo weren't playing in that game. But McCutchen and Evan Longoria and Buster Posey played for them. So I'm a little surprised that Judge and Stanton haven't played yet this year. But no, I'm not really interested in the fact that they're playing in their first spring training game. But it should be interesting to see what the lineup looks like for New York and where they place Judge and Stanton, because that will kind of determine where they sit in the lineup when the regular season starts. Jared, do you care that LeBron James is the first player ever with 30,000 points, 8,000 assists, and 8,000 rebounds?
Of course I care. I can't go 0 for 3 on being cares. No, not at all. Yes, I do care. This is obviously a milestone for LeBron James, and like you said, he's the only player in NBA history to ever get to this point. And I think this just shows what LeBron James is all about. Obviously, the high school phenom that he was, coming straight into the NBA with the Cavaliers. But LeBron James was never, a lights-out shooter. He was never a Kevin Durant, right, or one of those guys. He was always just a freakish athlete who was an all-around talent. He could score when he wanted to. He can shoot the jump shot. He can drive to the lane, and he was big enough to where he could, get fouled and get the and one. He obviously can guard just about every position on the court. He's a great assist man. He brings the ball up like a point guard, even though he can play power forward. And he obviously is big enough to get rebounds. So he's just, in my opinion, the best word to describe him is an all-around player. And having the 30,000 points and 8,000 assists and 8,000 rebounds, that just proves that he is an all-around player, and that his main focus has always been about getting his teammates involved, and it's never really been about him as far as, I want to be the guy who always scores the most points, right? Because listen, if that's the case, he's not always going to win. You even in basketball, even though yes, one player can change a game, over the course of a year, you're going to need other guys to step up for you. So he's always wanted to get his teammates involved, and I think this is clearly telling of that. So congratulations to him. He's definitely not done, and I don't see this record being broken anytime soon. I think this record is going to stand and last for a very, very long time. Nick, last question, sticking with basketball. Do you care that the Golden State Warriors chose to skip their White House meeting?
No, I don't care necessarily, because it's their right. If they don't want to go to the White House, they don't have to. But you were telling me off break that they went around D.C. and they kind of visited D.C. schools.
Yes, they chose to visit schools and students instead.
So, yeah, so they didn't totally just skip D.C. And I think that the reason they would have had the meeting this year is because they're playing the Wizards. Is it tonight? I think they're playing the Wizards tonight.
Yes.
So they're there. Obviously, the Warriors have probably been the most outspoken team about the White House visits and their displeasure of the Trump administration and stuff like that. So it's not surprising that they're not going to the White House. I'm actually surprised that there wasn't one single guy on the team that thought it would be that wanted to go to the White House. Obviously, this team is in the finals every year, and they've won 2 out of the last 3, so they've been there before. But there are some players on the team that didn't get to choose about the White House the first time. So I did think it was a little interesting that nobody went and that they just decided to totally throw it away. But no, they have their choice, they have their right, and if they don't want to go visit the White House, they don't have to. I think the White House visits are a little kind of blown out of proportion anyways. I don't think that's really that big of a deal, especially a team that repeats in multiple years. I don't think it's necessary that they have to always go back and do that whole day and all that stuff. So, no. So it doesn't.
A lot of not caring today.
I know. We should have got better questions.
Yeah. It's one of those days.
It is one of those.
It's today is National Sleeping Day, by the way.
Really?
Very rare. I don't know why I thought of that right now. I just kind of had to point that out.
It's disappointing because I didn't get that much sleep. So
maybe that's why you don't care.
Maybe it is. Yeah, you're right. But so that's it for Do You Care? We'll be back with some more sports talk. We're actually doing a little cover 5.
Oh boy.
Come up in the next segment. So we're going to cover. If you haven't heard that segment before, we've only done it once in the past. But it's a segment where we get 5 minutes and we got to cover the sport that we talk about for 5 minutes. And that will end off the podcast. So we'll be right back with a little cover 5 on the other side of this break.
2-time Cy Young Award winner Tim Lincecum has reportedly agreed to a contract with the Texas Rangers. The longtime San Francisco Giant didn't pitch in the majors or minors last year, but did work out for several clubs earlier this month. The deal is pending a physical and has not yet been confirmed by the Rangers.
In the midst of new additions arriving in Boston, the Bruins revealing some unfortunate news about one of their veteran leaders. Patrice Bergeron is out with a fractured right foot. He will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. It's no secret Bergie's injury is a big blow to the team with just 6 weeks remaining in the regular season.
Must beat Rooney to keep Canada's hopes alive. She is stuck! The United States wins gold in Pyeongchang!
Hey, Chuck. No. Hey, Chuck. I don't know. Police. I don't know why. Hello, police. Chris Paul trying to beat me up. This is Blake Griffin. Chris Paul trying to get in the locker room. Get down here and save me.
Cover 2 podcast back on OC Rock Radio for our final segment of the show. And if you were listening right before the break, Nick mentioned we have a Cover 5 segment going on, which we haven't done in a little while. But this time around, we're going to talk about multiple different sports for 5 minutes each. Just give you a little quick rundown of our thoughts and what we think. Kind of a fast-paced segment here. So, Nick, let's start with a little NBA talk. And we've got the Houston Rockets traveling to play the Clippers tonight. And the reason why we're talking about this isn't necessarily because of the matchup, but more or less because Chris Paul is returning to LA.
Yes.
And the feud that went along with that. So I will let's get your thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean this whole thing with the Rockets and Clippers last time they played was crazy. They had Rocket guys who were going into the locker room. Clipper guys were acting like they wanted them to go in the locker room, even though they wouldn't have done anything if they would have showed up in the locker room. Because we all know about NBA fake fighting, right? But no, it should be interesting. Chris Paul obviously coming back to LA again. Hopefully LA. Actually, you know what? Hopefully LAPD does get involved again. Let's have this happen again.
Wow.
Let's have full-scale brawl on the court. Carries over, go over to the locker room. No, I'm kidding.
So you're saying you're an advocate of violence?
I'm 100. Yeah, that's why. Why do you think I just talked about hockey on the Do You Care segment for a while? But no, I am obviously jokingly about that. But it should be interesting to watch the game. The Clippers actually had a pretty good game last night. They came back. They were losing to Denver the whole game, and they ended up kind of dominating them in the fourth quarter and come back. So Clippers are going to make the playoffs, man, and the Rockets are in their way. And even though the Rockets have the best record in the West, these games are going to be competitive because these teams have a lot of crossover players on their team because of the big Chris Paul trade that happened, and they've obviously faced each other in the playoffs a couple times in big, meaningful games where the Rockets most of the time have gotten the better of the Clippers. So there's always bad blood, but I'm definitely excited about this game. How about you?
Oh, I'm very excited, and for the reasons that you mentioned. Plus, I want to see. I guarantee you, Chris Paul is going to come out and he's just going to want to like embarrass the Clippers.
Oh yeah.
Not only for how he left the team and how things kind of ended on a bad, sour note, but obviously with the fights and everything that's broken out this season. And listen, he obviously made a name for himself before when he was with the Hornets, but he was with the Clippers for what was it, like 5 seasons, and they obviously on paper had a lot of talent and were projected to go to the finals multiple times. Obviously never did. So I think in his mouth, or I think he still got a lot of sour taste in his mouth, and I think he wants to come out and prove that he's still the top point guard in the league, which in my opinion he is. I think he's actually an MVP candidate. Not that many people are talking about him this season just because James Harden and LeBron James and Antetokounmpo are having such great seasons, but I think Chris Paul, when he's healthy and he's on the court, he's definitely an MVP candidate, and him and James Harden together are basically unstoppable.
Yeah, no, it's been ridiculous this year, and I think Blake Griffin obviously not playing in this game because he's been traded to Detroit, and you obviously have new players in Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley and Boban as well on the Clippers, so there will be a different matchup. But Jared, how concerned would you be if the Rockets lost to the Clippers again this season?
You know what? I wouldn't be too concerned because I know that right now the Rockets are the number 1 seed in the West.
Yeah.
They have the best record. We know how talented they are. Listen,
but look who's 8th seed though, the Clippers.
They are, and they're the 8th seed for a reason because they're a decent team, but they're 32-27. Okay, so they're just 5 games above 500. It's not like they're sitting here 20 games above 500 and completely killing it. So the only way that I give the Clippers a chance to win tonight is literally if they play with enough heart and they come out and say, listen, we're not going to get embarrassed. We know what happened last game with all the fighting and stuff. We know that we may not be as talented, but they're literally just going to come out and just play harder. Now, I'm not saying that the Rockets are going to come out and just kind of bow down and take it as a light game just because it's another regular season game and they're sitting in first place. I'm not saying that, but the only real chance the Clippers have is basically if they play with more passion and more will, and the Rockets just don't come out and don't really care as much because realistically the Rockets should, in a sense, blow the Clippers out.
See, I tried to get Jared to say something nice about the Clippers, and he never can.
No,
it's
not going to happen.
Just never can.
It's not going to happen.
But I do think there's something there. I do think there's something. If the Rockets can't beat them again, and the Rockets end up playing them in the playoffs, having lost season series, having lost most of the games they played them, I think there would be something in their heads where, oh man, this team actually makes this tough, and this first round matchup is not going to be as easy as we thought. So I do think there actually is something there. Just drop my paper. Hold on. And I do think that, but I'm actually going to agree with you. I do think the Rockets will win the game tonight because I think the new roster for the Clippers actually is as good as the other one. So I do think there will be the Rockets will win the game. So we're at 5 minutes, so we got to switch topics. We'll go the Winter Olympics. So Winter Olympics, they ended this past Sunday, I believe. Was it Sunday, right?
Yes, I believe that was the closing ceremonies.
Sunday. So the Olympics are over. So we just kind of want to give our thoughts on what we thought of the whole Winter Olympics. And JD, could you pull up that medal count real quick? I just want to be able to talk about that.
Yeah, we U.S. didn't do so hot.
No. The U.S. didn't do the best they could with the medals. Not too many. I believe it was,
came in 4th place overall as far as medals go with 23. Norway, wow.
Norway kicked some ass.
They did with a whopping 39 total medals. I think it was, I don't know, just my own perspective and reading certain articles and listening to another podcast. I feel that it was, I don't want to say let down, but I think there's a lot of people that thought the U.S. could have done a lot better. And obviously at the end of the day, the medals show who did the best. I feel that, I don't know if it was just because we only got 23 or if it was just the fact that we actually didn't perform as well. I don't know. I have this weird taste in my mouth. That's like, we didn't do as well. Like, honestly, I know that, Winter Olympics isn't the U.S.'s main thing. Obviously, we're better at Summer Olympics overall. I don't know. I just felt like it was just an okay Olympics for us.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think there's some silver lining to it though, because we have so many good young up and coming stars. It's almost like we're on that lull, that rebuild.
Okay.
Almost, and I use rebuild in like the best term possible, but I just think a lot of the stars have kind of gone away a little bit, and like we saw Lindsey Vonn competed, but she only got the bronze because she's been dealing with injury. And I just think these young up and comers are what we can bank on.
Chloe Kim.
Chloe Kim, Red Gerard. We had multiple speed skaters that were young as well. The dancers, the ice skating dancers, a couple of them were younger too. So I think we have a lot of up and coming strength for our team. So although we didn't get the medals and it was a little disappointing, there was some silver lining in the fact that it looks like we have a lot of young and up and coming people that can win a lot of awards.
Right. I want to ask you a quick question about the scandal with the Russians and how they were. Nick is already smiling. I don't believe they were allowed to at the closing ceremonies walk, were they?
See, I missed the closing ceremonies because I was just out and about and stuff. But
wow, Nick, how dare you miss the closing ceremonies?
I'm sorry. But the Russians, they compete under the Olympic Athletes from Russia moniker, the OAR, and even though they were the gold medalist in the hockey, which deeply disappointed me because they talked a lot of trash on about the U.S. when they beat the U.S. because the U.S. obviously beat them. When all the NHL players played and it was actually a legitimate tournament for the men. So the Russians, I don't know why they're talking so much about beating a bunch of scrubs. No offense to the scrubs on the USA roster, but this was not what we wanted to do. And the Russian team obviously had stars like Ilya Kovalchuk and Pavel Datsyuk and people like that. So, the Russians, it was an interesting Olympics, obviously with a huge doping scandal. They were not allowed to compete under the Russian moniker. So if they got to walk, I'd be surprised if they got to walk because they weren't really a country necessarily. So if they didn't walk, it kind of just makes sense to me. I don't really have that much of an opinion on that necessarily. But
more surprising gold medal winner, are U.S. men's curling or U.S. women's hockey?
Oh, the curling, because the women's hockey, if you watched what happened in 2014 when they lost to Canada, they were winning by 1, and they shot a puck down the ice with about a minute to go at the empty net and hit the post, which would have put them up by 2, presumably getting them the gold. And Canada went down and scored like 50 seconds later, and then they lost in OT. So that wasn't as surprising that they got that. The curling, though, which by the way, boringest thing to ever watch. The curling, I think that was the most surprising because I don't know anybody that curls, and I don't even know where you would curl. But we're at the 5-minute mark, so we got to stop. And we unfortunately talked about curling to end it. So moving on, let's go to a little bit of MLB news. Tim Lincecum is back. He signed with the Texas Rangers. Lincecum tried out for a couple teams a couple weeks ago and is now signed by the Rangers. Jared, I'll let you start with this. What do you think about Lincecum coming back, and do you think he'll succeed with Texas?
I don't. I think his best days are definitely behind him. He was obviously an all-star with the Giants, and I think his arm is in a sense done. I think it was more of a branding thing, and listen, I think he has a lot to offer as far as experience and coming in and being able to help the young guys, the young pitchers on their roster. So I think from that standpoint, I think he can come in and bring a lot of value to the team. But as far as actually pitching, and like if you expect him to pitch 20, even 15 games this season, I think you're kind of fooling yourself. Just one of those things where I think father time has caught up with him, and just the amount of wear and tear that he's had on that shoulder. Like I said, I think it was a smart move for them to bring him in. if with the understanding that, listen, if he's able to get you a couple starts through the season, that's great. But I think it was really more of a learning and experience opportunity for the young guys. If they, like I said, if they brought him in expecting him to be, one of their starters and guys for the long haul, I think that was sadly mistaken.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're doing it because of that. I just think Texas is kind of in this weird mode with their roster right now where they don't have a lot of starting pitching. And I think they just kind of want to see what he does. But the last time we saw Tim Lincecum, it was for the Angels, so we got to watch him up close.
Horrible.
Terrible. I one of the games I went with one of my friends, too. They played Houston, so obviously Houston's a good game. But I remember Lincecum I think, was cracking about 86, 87 on the gun with his fastball and gave up multiple home runs to Houston. This is obviously the one game I was at, but that was kind of how it was with him. Now, here's the difference, Jared. And here, I'll tell you this, and maybe this will change your mind a little bit about Lincecum. He was hitting, when he did do his little showcase for a couple teams, he was in the low 90s consistently. The low 90s, hitting about 92, 93 consistently on the gun. So, does that change your opinion on it at all? Maybe that his mechanics are a little better. He is looking at least a little better going into it because I think we both have a sour taste in our mouth about what he did with the Angels. But does that change your mind a little bit that he's throwing harder and that his breaking balls are working a little better?
Not really. It's spring training, and listen, he's had the entire offseason, obviously to get his body right, and I'm sure right now he feels fantastic. But you get into the regular season, he starts to get more innings on that arm. You get midway through the season. Is he still going to have that 92, 93? Is that hip surgery going to start to creep up on him again, or is he going to be able to withstand that? Listen, I would love to see him come back and perform and kind of regain that stature that he has, a two-time Cy Young winner, because obviously I would like to see him go out on top. I can't trust with the amount of surgeries that he's had and the huge downfall that he's had in the last couple of years. I don't see him really coming back and having that big of an effect on the mound.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I'll give my take on him. I do think that he'll do good with Texas for most of the season. I think you're actually right. I do believe that maybe later in the season, not having pitched for so long and not having pitched kind of a full season for a while, that might take a toll on him. And that he might not be able to kind of finish the season strong. And I don't really know where Texas is going to be. But this AL West is looking like it's going to be pretty solid. Obviously, you have the Astros, who are the defending World Series champs. The Angels roster is improved. We were just talking about the lineup, how good the lineup looks. Seattle is not a bad team. Oakland's even better than last year. So Texas is in kind of this weird little limbo with their team. And I don't know if necessarily Tim Lincecum will help them when it comes to like the playoffs or anything like that. They can make it, but I do think he'll contribute enough during the regular season to help them out. I don't think he'll be as bad as he was with the Angels. I think he'll play a little bit better, and but it should be interesting to watch. And like I said, I'm obviously rooting for him. 2-time Cy Young Award winner, multiple-time world champion. Hopefully he does good. So last 5-minute segment of Cover 5. We're going to jump into the NHL a little bit. Patrice Bergeron was injured for the Boston Bruins, and two other Lightning players, Nikita Kucherov and Tyler Johnson, key players for these two monster teams in the Eastern Conference, were injured. So I'll start talking about this a little bit. We kind of just want to extend on this, talking about how these injuries might affect these teams going into the stretch run. Because obviously we're getting into one of the last months of the season, March. And both of these teams have been playing fantastic the entire season. But will these stars getting injured affect them? Personally, I think they will. And especially Nikita Kucherov and Patrice Bergeron. Because Nikita Kucherov is leading the league in scoring right now. Okay, he's the leading NHL scorer. And he's hurt. We don't know the extent of his injury yet. But it was, I believe, a lower body injury. And then Patrice Bergeron was hit with a puck. A guy was just trying to clear the puck out of his zone and actually broke his foot. Just hit him in the wrong spot on his skate and broke his foot. So Bergeron's out for a couple weeks now. And the Bruins, man, they've been the hottest team ever, and they just got Rick Nash. So I do think these two teams, this might affect them going into the playoffs, because you want to be going into the playoffs hot, obviously, and you don't want to be going in cold. And I do think this will affect both these teams. I do think that this they come into the playoffs, this might be that chance for other teams to get up there and take shots at them and try to knock them down. Because Tampa Bay has looked unstoppable the whole season, and Boston of late has looked unstoppable. So, Jared, obviously, I know you don't follow hockey as much, but losing 2 stars, because these are 2 legitimate stars in these 2 teams, losing 2 stars, how much do you think this will affect these 2 teams?
Listen, obviously, when you lose a star, you're not going to be able to replace him with another star unless you're the Golden State Warriors, right?
Of course, yeah.
But we're talking hockey right now. And no, I do defer to you a lot because you do follow hockey a little more than I do. But this goes with any sport. When you lose a star, you're going to have diminished play to a certain extent. Now, with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Boston Bruins, both of these teams, they're both Tampa Bay Lightning are leading in the East, and the Bruins, like you said, they're hot. They're coming in. They're sitting at number 3. So they both have quality rosters and quality teams. So can they overcome that and keep their stature as the top teams in the East? I think they can. But I think the biggest thing that you mentioned was the teams that are underneath them. I think they have a better chance of creeping up and getting closer to overseeding these teams. So I think that's what this is really about. I think the Lightning and Bruins are obviously in the playoffs, and they're kind of just waiting out that time until they can get their stars back. Yeah. But I think it's about the other teams like the Flyers and the Penguins and the Devils, who now have an opportunity to maybe get a game or 2 ahead that they probably wouldn't have if these stars were still playing. So I think it just makes it a little more interesting as the playoff race is concerned.
That's true. Yeah.
But as far as these 2 teams really falling off, I don't think so. Obviously, their stars have helped them, but they're there because of their teams as a whole, not necessarily just because of one star player.
Yeah, and it should be interesting, especially with Patrice Bergeron, because he's one of the captains on the team. So,
and how long do you think he's going to be out for?
I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay,
so it's not that bad, but it's 2 or 3 weeks. They've been so good lately. They've been the best team in the NHL for like the last 2 months. It seems like they're just barely losing any games, and they just get Rick Nash, the star player from New York, and then your star center, one of your captains gets hurt. So I do think Bergeron will be more of a loss for Boston than, let's say, Kucherov and Johnson will for Tampa Bay, because Tampa Bay still has a loaded roster. Steven Stamkos, all these guys. So I do think it will affect Boston a little more, but I think you're right. I think these teams have a chance to move up. The Flyers have been playing really well. They're actually first in the Metropolitan Division. Nobody had that happening before the season. And then, of course, Pittsburgh, defending Stanley Cup champs. Anytime you have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin on your roster, you're going to have a chance to be in the Stanley Cup. And nobody wants to play Pittsburgh when they get to the playoffs, so you want to have your stars. And we'll see how long Kucherov and Johnson are out, and we know how long Bergeron's out, and hopefully the foot injury doesn't affect him too much. But it should be interesting to watch the playoff run a little bit, because, like you said, standings will change and all that. So I think it's been about 5 minutes on this segment. So I think we'll go to end off the podcast. We'll go to our final thoughts here, and I'll start with mine. Obviously, going to spring training this past weekend in Arizona, it was cool to see kind of baseball starting to get back in full form. See the stars start to play. See baseball really move up on the scale. So I'm just excited. The fact that baseball's coming back, we're having another sport start, right? We have football that's not happening anymore. Yeah, basketball and hockey, but it's kind of that run where we know which teams are going to make the playoffs and all that stuff. And so I am excited that baseball's coming back, and I'm excited to have my Los Angeles Dodgers try to make that World Series run again because of what happened last year, losing in Game 7. It's never the best thing to be losing in that kind of fashion. So I'm just excited the baseball season is starting. But Jerry, I'll let you take over in the podcast.
Yeah, my final thought is going to the NFL, and it actually has to do with my Cowboys. Mr. Roger Goodell, who is looking to sue Cowboys owner Jerry Jones about $2 million, basically in litigation fees, and this has to do mostly with how the Cowboys handled Ezekiel Elliott's suspension last year, where they kept appealing and appealing and appealing, and it kept going to the courts. So basically, Roger Goodell, the $50 million a year man who has his own private jet and is basically going to be set for the rest of his life, doesn't have enough money, and he wants to sue Jerry Jones for $2 million more because of all of the quote-unquote damages that were done throughout this process. I think it's a joke. I think it's ridiculous. All these owners and Roger Goodell, it's like all the money just kind of shifts hands. It goes from one billionaire to the next. So I think the issue that I have with this is, one, why is Roger Goodell doing this now? This whole process has been over for months. Why didn't he do it right after? And two, if he does actually find Jerry Jones and, Jerry Jones does have to come up with this money and fork it over, where's the money going? A lot of times you hear that, at least in the NFL, when players get fined, that money ends up going to specific charities that the NFL is associated with. But you don't really hear too often about the specific, what charities. Are those charities listed? How much of the money is going to them? Be all of it, or is it just a percentage? So I'd be very curious, and obviously $2 million is no chump change. So where is this $2 million going? Is it going to Roger Goodell? Is it where is it going? What pot is it going into? Whose hands is it going into? And that's something that I would like to know, because if it's just going to Roger Goodell for his damages for going on with this process, then he is a fool. Not that he's not already a fool, but he's just a complete idiot. And I think something else needs to be done about this. So, Roger Goodell, will he find Jerry Jones? We don't know, but if he does, I guarantee you, Nick and I will be talking about it next week on the show.
Absolutely. There you go. You hear the music, and if you were hearing construction sounds that last couple segments, it's because they're working on the studio next to us. That's actually why we're in different studios.
Keep it down over there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the end of the podcast. Good podcast today for not as much news as we're used to today, but we'll be back next week talking about whatever's going on in sports. So for Nick Nina,
I'm Jared Smith,
and this has been the Cover 2 Podcast.